Silo Season 3 has spent 3 episodes teaching us that memory is currency in Silo 18, and Episode 4, Whatever You Do, Don't Go Home, is where someone finally has to spend it or lose everything. Juliette is unconscious. Camille is holding a decision that could end a life. And the official logline just confirms something the trailer only hinted at it. Let's start with the person actually holding the power in this episode, because it isn't Juliette. It's Camille Sims. By the end of Episode 3, Camille wasn't just a bureaucrat protecting a fragile silo anymore. She was a woman staring down the barrel of a decision that would define who she becomes for the rest of the season. Juliette lay poisoned, unconscious, a threat to the stability Camille has spent her entire adult life defending. And the algorithm, that cold, calculating presence she now answers to, made it painfully clear what handling Juliette could mean. Not containment, not conversation, something far more permanent. Here's what makes this so uncomfortable to watch. Camille isn't a villain twirling a mustache. She's a mother. Every choice she's made since taking on this role has been filtered through the lens of protecting her son. His safety, his future, his ability to grow up in a silo that doesn't collapse into chaos. That's not evil. That's fear wearing the mask of duty. And it's exactly why her next move matters so much. Because Camille already told us something important, even if she didn't mean to. When she let Juliette walk free after holding her and her son hostage, she admitted it wasn't mercy that stopped her, it was curiosity. She wanted to know what Juliette would find. That's not the confession of someone who's fully committed to silencing the truth. That's a confession of someone who's still, on some buried level, chasing it too. So when Camille finally stands over an unconscious Juliette with the ability to end this permanently, I don't think this is going to be a clean, easy decision for her. I think it's going to gut her. And that internal war, protector versus truth seeker, mother versus rebel at heart, might be the most compelling thing this episode has to offer, even more than whatever happens to Juliette physically. Now let's talk about the title itself, because Whatever You Do, Don't Go Home is doing a lot of quiet work. On the surface, it reads like a warning aimed directly at Juliette, a callback to the fire, the chaos, and the collapse that engulfed her apartment and put her in this state to begin with. Surely sprinting toward the flames, desperate to reach her, only reinforces that reading. Home, in this episode, isn't safety, it's the site of catastrophe. But titles in this show rarely serve just one storyline. Silo has built its entire identity around parallel structure. What happens above ground echoes what happens below. What happens to one character rhymes with what happens to another. So it's worth asking, whose home is this warning really about? Because according to the episode's own description, this installment isn't only about Juliette dodging Camille. It also follows Daniel out in the world beyond the silos, reaching out to someone he trusts for help. And that detail changes the shape of this theory entirely. If Daniel is turning to an old connection because he's cornered, desperate, or in danger, then Don't Go Home might not be a warning about a burning apartment at all. It might be a warning about walking back into a life, a relationship, or an obligation that's no longer safe to return to. Think about where we left Daniel. He's a man being quietly courted by people in power. People who saved a city with his invention, and now want to use that same genius to build the next generation of silos. Meanwhile, Helen, the person who's actually been digging for the truth alongside him, has already paid a price for it. She lost her job. She's facing legal exposure. She is, in every sense, homeless in a metaphorical way, cut loose from the safety she used to have. If Daniel is the one being pulled toward comfort and career advancement, and Helen is the one still standing in the wreckage of the truth they uncover together, then the title could be speaking directly to her. Because for Helen, home was never really safe to begin with, not once she started asking questions the government didn't want answered. That's the kind of dual-meaning title Silo has used before, and it's exactly the sort of layered writing that keeps this fandom obsessing over single sentences for a full week between episodes. Now, back to Juliette, because there's a detail from Episode 3 that I don't think has got enough attention. She's gone multiple days without her memory suppression medication. That's not a small thing. That medication isn't just a mood stabilizer. It's the mechanism actively preventing her true memories from surfacing. Every day she goes without it, the wall between Camille's version of events and what actually happened gets thinner. Now put her in a hospital bed, unconscious, vulnerable, dreaming. If there was ever a moment for buried memories to claw their way back to the surface, this is it. Unconsciousness strips away the conscious effort to suppress. It's the one state where the mind stops filtering. If the show wants to hand Juliette her memories back without a clunky exposition dump, a fever dream sequence while she's unconscious is about as elegant a solution as they could ask for. And that raises a real question hanging over this entire episode. Does Juliette wake up as a woman Camille has been managing for 3 months, grateful, compliant, unaware, or does she wake up as a version of herself who already knows exactly what Silo 18 is hiding? Because those are two very different people, and only one of them survives what's coming next. Let's shift focus to Robert Sims, because the story might be the quietest heartbreak of this entire season, and it's building towards something that could reshape the power structure of Silo 18 entirely. Sims used to be the machine's most loyal gear. He carried out orders without flinching, sacrificed time with his own family for what he believed was a greater good, and trusted that the system he served was worth that sacrifice. That trust bought him proximity to power. It made him someone who mattered. Now watch what's happening to him in real time. Camille isn't just his wife anymore. She's becoming the very system he used to serve. And in doing so, she's slowly edging him out of the room. Literally, that door closing in his face wasn't just blocking his body from a conversation. It was symbolic of something much bigger. Sims is no longer inside the decision-making circle he spent years earning his way into. That's a brutal thing to sit with for a man like him. He didn't build his identity around being a bystander. He built it around being essential. But here's where it gets personal instead of just political. Camille is reportedly weighing whether to introduce a substance into Silo 18's water supply that would wipe the memories of everyone living there. Everyone. That includes their son. That includes every shared moment Sims has fought to protect. Every bedtime. Every conversation. Every piece of proof that he exists to that child as a father and not just a stranger who happens to live in the same apartment. Compare that to what we just watched him fighting for in the previous episode. Pushing to create more memories with his family, treating time with his son like something precious and finite. Now imagine watching your wife casually discuss erasing all of it for the sake of stability. That's not a policy disagreement. That's an existential threat to the one part of his life he still has full ownership over. And this is exactly why I think a betrayal is coming, though maybe not in the way people expect. This doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be Sims storming into a room and denouncing his wife in front of the entire silo. It could be quieter and far more devastating than that. A delay here, a warning slip to the wrong person there, a decision to slow walk an operation he's supposed to be enforcing. The kind of betrayal that doesn't look like betrayal until it's already too late to stop. There's also the matter the committee Sims has been quietly assembling, along with the rewritten pact he's had Billings working on behind the scenes. If Camille moves forward with mass memory wipe, all of that groundwork becomes worthless overnight. Everything he's built toward, gone, along with everyone's ability to even remember why it mattered. I don't think Sims is a man who's willing to let that happen without a fight. He spent his whole life inside a system that asks people to sacrifice their individuality for the collective good. But erasing his son's memory of him isn't a sacrifice. It's an erasure of his own existence in the one relationship he actually cares about. There's a difference between duty and self-destruction, and I think this is the episode where Sims starts to understand which one Camille is asking him to accept. Now let's connect this to Juliette, because the parallel here is almost too precise to be an accident. We spent this entire season watching Juliette grieve a version of Shirley she can't remember loving. The pain of that loss has been front and center, a friendship reduced to unfamiliar face, a bond erased by forces outside her control. If Sims is forced to watch that same fate creep toward his own son, it stops being an abstract policy debate for him. It becomes a preview of his own future grief, playing out in someone else's life first. That's the kind of storytelling parallel that doesn't need to be spelled out for the audience to feel it. And if the show is smart about pacing, I'd expect at least one scene where Sims watches Juliette's confusion, her inability to reach for memories that used to be there, and visibly connects the dots to what Camille is proposing for their son. Then there's Daniel Keene, and his situation is shaping up to be less about villains and heroes, and more about the quiet, corrosive pull of ambition. Daniel invented technology that reportedly helped save New Orleans, which has turned him into something valuable to the people currently reshaping the country's future. Helen, meanwhile, has been the one absorbing the consequences of their shared investigation, losing her job, facing legal trouble, carrying the risk that Daniel has, so far, mostly avoided. That imbalance matters. Because if Daniel is being offered a seat at the table, a chance to build the next chapter of this world using his own invention, he's being handed an incredibly tempting off. Recognition, security, relevance. All he has to do is stop asking questions about whether the disaster that reshaped the country was really caused by an outside enemy or something closer to home. Given how deflated and worn down he's looked in recent scenes, I wouldn't be shocked if this episode is where Daniel starts rationalizing his way towards silence. Not because he's a bad person, but because ambition is patient, and it rarely announces itself as a betrayal while it's happening. Helen, on the other hand, might be walking further into danger completely alone. And if the official episode description is right about Daniel reaching out to an old friend for help, that detail alone tells us something is closing in, something serious enough that he can't handle it through official channels anymore. So, where does all of this leave us heading into Friday? Strip away the theories for a second, and look at what's actually at stake structurally. This episode is titled around the idea of home, and yet almost nobody in this story has anywhere safe left to go. Juliette can't return to the version of home she remembers, because that home no longer exists. It was rewritten before she even woke up from her injuries. Camille can't go home to the marriage she used to have, not while she's quietly weighing decisions that could dissolve her husband's entire identity. Sims can't go home to the man he used to be, the loyal enforcer who never questioned the mission, because that version of him is starting to crack under the weight of what loyalty is now costing him. And Helen and Daniel don't have a home to return to either. Not one that hasn't been compromised by what they've uncovered. That's what makes this episode's title so effective, whether it ends up being literal or symbolic. It isn't really a warning about a building. It's a warning about the illusion that any of these people can go back to who they were before the season started peeling back the lies. Let's talk about what a win looks like for each of these threads, because I think that's where the tension really lives. For Juliette, survival isn't just about waking up. It's about waking up with something intact, either her memories or enough awareness to sense that something has been taken from her. If she comes back exactly as compliant and unaware as she's been for the past 3 months, that's almost a worse outcome than death for her arc, because it means the silo has successfully finished erasing her. The most compelling version of this episode is the one where she claws back even a fragment of who she used to be, even if it terrifies her. For Camille, the win isn't choosing mercy or choosing duty. It's what that choice costs her either way. If she lets Juliette live because curiosity wins out over control, she has to live with the risk that decision creates for everyone she claims to protect. If she doesn't, she has to live with what she's become. Someone capable of erasing a person the same way she's considering erasing an entire silo's memory. There's no clean outcome here, and that's exactly why it works. For Sims, the moment of truth isn't a dramatic confrontation. It's whether he can bring himself to act at all, knowing that opposing his wife means opposing the system he spent his life serving. Betrayal is easy to write as a big, loud moment. It's much harder and much more interesting to write as a slow accumulation of small choices that eventually add up to someone changing sides without ever announcing it. And for Daniel and Helen, the real tension isn't whether the government is hiding the truth about what happened to this country. We already suspect that. The tension is whether truth means anything once ambition, and fear start pulling two people who used to trust each other in opposite directions. Here's the thing about Silo as a show. It rarely gives its audience the satisfaction of an easy answer in a single episode. Every reveal tends to open 2 more questions behind it. So even if we get movement on all 4 of these fronts this week, don't expect clean resolution. Expect complication. Expect at least one moment where a character makes a choice that feels justified in the moment and horrifying in hindsight. That's been the engine driving this entire season. And honestly, it's the reason the show has managed to stay must-watch television 3 seasons in. It's not built on shock value. It's built on watching people we understand make decisions we can see coming and still can't fully forgive. So here's where I land heading into Friday. I think Juliette survives, but not unscathed and not unchanged. I think Camille's curiosity wins out over the algorithm's cold logic, at least for now, even if it costs her politically. I think Sims takes his first real step toward working against the system he used to serve, quietly enough that we might not even clock it as betrayal until a few episodes from now. And I think Daniel gets closer to the comfortable path the government is offering him, while Helen is left further out in the cold, carrying a risk that was never fairly split between them to begin with. None of that is guaranteed. That's the fun of it. Silo has spent 3 seasons proving it's willing to zig when the audience expects a zag, and episode 4 has all the ingredients to do exactly that. What do you think actually happens when Camille reaches that hospital bed? Does Juliette wake up remembering everything? Or does she wake up more lost than ever? Drop your theory in the comments. I want to see who's actually paying attention to the details this season is planting. If this breakdown helped you see the episode differently, hit like so more people find it, and subscribe if you want to keep untangling this show with me week after week. See you after Friday's episode.